If you weren't expecting a roundtable discussion on the core subjects with digital portfolios, then you're probably in the wrong webinar. But I say stick around because I think you're going to enjoy it anyways. So with that, before we get going, it looks like our poll is pretty equal. We've got a tie between Bulb pros who think they've got this whole DP thing down to Bulb beginners and brand new to Bulb. All of this DP stuff you're not so sure about, but you're ready to learn, and that's fantastic. And it looks like actually across the board, we've got Bulb users and Bulb novices. We've got a good mix of people in this webinar today. So just really quick, make sure that if you've got a question, don't hesitate to ask it. You can go ahead and put it into chat. We may not get to it right at that time. There will be time after we've gone through our round of questions with the panelists to go over your questions as well. And you will be seeing here today, not just my slide deck, but you'll be seeing actual examples from our panelists. And so there we go. There's our final numbers.
All right.
I'm going to go ahead and close that out. And so here we are, guys. Welcome today to our Bulb webinar on roundtable discussion, teaching core subjects within digital portfolios. And as you can see, we've got 4 fantastic panelists. So just because I know we've got a lot of new people coming on, I would love to start from the top. And since I'm seeing Brandon first, we'll just go in alphabetical order here. Again, my name is Michelle Diaz. I'm with Bulb Digital Portfolios. I'm on the team here, but it's not gonna be a lot of me today. It's gonna be a lot of our panelists. So I wanna get to them. Brandon, if you don't mind giving us a quick 1 to 2 minutes about who you are and what you do and where you're from.
All righty. My name is Brandon Bruton. I'm from Houston, Texas. I am a senior manager of academics for Houston ISD Secondary Curriculum and Development Department, and I also support teachers as a teacher development specialist, and I support secondary social studies, so grades 6 through 12.
Fantastic. Thank you. And so I'm going to go to Shona, if you don't mind.
I'm Shona Rose, and I work in the Panhandle of Texas at a region service center, and most of my work surrounds supporting language arts teachers from 6 through 12, 9 through 12 in their schools and campuses.
Fantastic. And next on my list here, I see LaShara.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Dr. LaShara McElhaney, and I work at a university with pre-service teachers, so I teach future teachers. So I get to work with also higher ed faculty as well, and professional development in both of those areas. But I work here in the Metroplex, and my background is in elementary education, so working in those with lower elementary for the most part, and literacy and writing and instructional technology and all of those different things.
Fantastic. And last but definitely not least, Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Kemper. I work in Capella ISD near DFW Airport in the Metroplex in Texas. I support K-12 math in curriculum and instruction. I was a high school math teacher and middle school math teacher, but I sure do love elementary too. So I have the opportunity to create a lot of content and share a lot of love for math. So I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. That was wonderful. And so I want to go ahead and get to my next slide. So just to review really quick, everybody, the learning objectives for today. This is what we will be covering. We're going to be talking about the benefits of using digital portfolios within those 4 core subject areas. And just like you heard from our panelists, they're pretty well experienced and versed across different subjects, different grade levels. So you're going to be seeing and hearing from them, and you could very well hear them sharing ideas, not necessarily in their subject area, but because they have that experience, you're going to be able to listen in and see how this can help in your own classrooms. We're going to provide examples of how digital portfolios work in distance learning, and we're going to share how you can use those digital portfolios to track progress, right? Because right now, we're trying to figure out how do we really track our students and the work that they're doing? How do we assess it? And Bulb is a great place for you to be able to do that. And then of course, I promise you there will be time for Q&A at the end, and we will have some links to some templates that we'll be sharing out from our panelists. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can get to it. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with our very first question, and we're going to get right to it. So, panelists, and I'm going to start with Mary on this one. So perfect, you're right here. Mary, and for all of you, what are the benefits of using digital portfolios in your specific area of mathematics?
Well, contrary to the experience that we as adults had when we were in school, math is different and should look different. In fact, you should be able to see math in photos and video, in words and in spoken language. And so the digital portfolio provides this great opportunity to house all of those mediums and also to show growth. With a growth mindset about the developmental progression of learning math, it's a great way to collect and archive moments of success and moments of struggle as we continue to learn and grow, knowing that math is such a great and positive experience.
Excellent. And so with that, I would love to go to Brandon. Brandon, can you give me that same perspective from the social sciences viewpoint and any others you have?
I can, and it sort of mirrors what Mary stated. However, with our use of digital portfolios in Houston ISD with our department, we wanted to be reflective practitioners. We wanted to reflect on our work as coaches, and we wanted to reflect on our curriculum as students were working on it. And the mindset is that teachers could also begin to reflect, and then our students can also reflect. And they can look at their work, so their writing samples, their independent practice assignments, and they can actually chronicle that over time, so they can see their growth from August and all the way until May. And they can see, okay, you know what, I didn't start off as a good writer. I didn't start off as someone that actually understood this particular standard or this particular concept. But as time has gone on, I'm able to articulate myself in my writing, and I'm able to show that growth. And it also shows the growth of students, not necessarily with test scores, but with their actual authentic work. So that's the power of the portfolios that we utilize in social studies, and I believe also in all of the content areas.
Right, that's fantastic. And Shona, from an English language arts?
Well, I've heard it often said that reading is breathing in and writing is breathing out. And what we want to have opportunities is for people to be able to contribute as well as to consume. And whenever you have a digital portfolio, you're able to have a nice way to organize that, deliver that in such a way that we experience media today now, because it is both multimodal and digital. And we need to be able to build the way that we can consume those things in the portfolio, but we also give a way that we can deliver those things to students and teachers and give them opportunities to create and contribute to the society around them in that same way.
That's great. And LaShera, thinking of science and knowing your elementary background.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of with student side of things, really being able to track their progress, but showing that growth over time, because we're changing so quickly as young students and developing those foundational skills that will eventually be demonstrated in higher ed or in their secondary worlds as well. But being able to track that process, the growth, having that reflective process on the learning in the fields that they're going to be in, specifically with science and with math, being able to show that process or that think aloud, that demonstrating how they're understanding and coming up with those ideas, or answering the questions that are available. And even in thinking in terms of science, particularly, it's all about process observation, seeing a lot of real world connections happening across those two areas, especially with math and science, kind of go hand in hand. But also across the other areas as well. We always have that connection back to the real world application of the learning. And with a digital portfolio, students can really demonstrate that by embedding videos or showing pictures, writing the reflection piece that goes along with it to demonstrate that understanding. But I was also thinking in terms of the teacher side of things, the benefit for a teacher is that authentic assessment component and being able to really observe that growth, seeing the strengths and the weaknesses of your students, but also having that snapshot or being able to differentiate for that particular student and having the evidence there especially if we're talking about response to intervention. Having that development over time from beginning of a time period to the end of a time period. And I think it'll be interesting to see how things shape up for this year, how, you know, with schools being closed for 8 to 10 weeks here at the end of the semester, and seeing how that kind of rolls into next year and the growth that's happening. It's just been interesting from a parent perspective, but also as an educator as well.
Yeah, that's so actually hearing you guys all share these various things about progress, growth, assessment, over time, and just thinking too of the current state of where we are and what, you know, me as a parent, you as an educator and a parent, and all that we're experiencing with our students, and thinking along that path, and just how are you using digital portfolios to help those students show that work? Could you guys provide some examples of how to creatively incorporate, for instance, a digital portfolio lesson into one of these core subject areas for your students? And if you've got something to share, don't hesitate to share your screen. But any type of real example that I think our educators can see how you can incorporate a digital portfolio, or in this case, speaking bold for a minute, a page or a collection that's going to really show that process, the work that it took to get there, the progression, and then basically that final product that they can now showcase and say, this is me, this is what I've learned and what I've created. And so with that, I would love to start with Shona this time. Oh, you're on mute. Okay.
One of my favorite things to do with the portfolio has been my writing notebook. And it has been a powerful place for me to collect my writing, because I want to be able to model what I'm doing with students over time. And I want to go in and show how my writing changes and how I use the strategies such as a depth charge or a prove it or imitation to go in and improve my writing. It also gives me a place to, need that bar to move. It gives me a place to house a lot of the resources in a way that's organized and in a fashion that I can get to it easily. And so I can put everything in here that I need. For example, my favorite one is the writing notebook. And so I have the teacher's writing notebook here that, for example, if I want to teach a pre-writing or planning lesson, I can go into my seed ideas tile collection, and then I have all of my lessons on pre-writing ideas that help people generate ideas. Then I can go very quickly into a lesson that I want to look at that has from my writing notebook, my paper one. And then it helps me show all of the activities and lessons that I need, a video that I can show, all of the resources, and then a sample of my writing that gives an exemplar for students to imitate. And that way it gives me a way to go in and out of, well, here's what I'm going to be working with, but here's the lesson and the exemplars. So it's really a place that keeps me organized, and then I have everything I need. If I'm going to be conferencing with a student, I can go to, well, I can see that you're at the revising stage. Let's open up and let's look at some of the activities and strategies that we could use to help you revise. And I think, for example, let's look at, you've got to really go deeper in there. So let's try this strategy of the 5 whys that can really help you go in deeper to develop the things that you are wanting to say.
That's fantastic. Just out of curiosity, are those public?
Yes.
Awesome. Because we might be sharing those out. So.
Yeah, and I have one for the teacher and a template for the student, so that you have
excellent.
them for both.
Okay.
So the student one is here.
That's great. Thank you, Shona. So LaShara, on that, what about from your side?
I was playing around with the idea of what I've been seeing on social media with kids and parents and teachers just trying some different things, learning new new things during this time of quarantine, what I call the hashtag Q life around our house. And so I was kind of inspired by some of the Rube Goldbergs, and my daughter came in the other day. She goes, you know what, I think I'm going to learn how to make paper airplanes today. And she started watching videos and trying new things. And so I put together just a quick little tile collection on my bulb app yesterday. Let me see if I can pull up my screen here. Let me share it with you. There we go. All right, can you see that?
It's wanting to come up. It'll get there. There it is.
Okay, so I came down here just to created a science. I was thinking like in terms of big ideas, force and motion, what kinds of quick lesson ideas you could put together there. And I thought it was a great place for either to put together lessons, ideas for students to go through and have the resources available, and they could have some interaction and engagement with it, or even for teachers to be able to put together some lesson ideas to share out with their students, to try these things at home, and then to give feedback and kind of share and demonstrate their work. So I just started pulling together some Rube Goldberg videos and pictures, just a quick just resources here, and it's just moving really slowly, but being able to quickly embed some YouTube videos, ask some questions, even put together some lesson plan resources there for teachers to use, some other additional technology tools, and then, just some videos. This was pretty cool. It's like 6 minutes long, but pass the salt please in this age of social distancing. And so it's a whole routine of getting it from one side of the table to the other. So it was really neat. And then just, a resource available to use here. And then I went back and kind of put one together for the paper airplanes for students, to be able to go through and just kind of show how you might do this as more of an interactive lesson, tying it to your objectives. And I didn't go too deep into it, but just kind of quickly throwing together some ideas. Sorry, it's just moving slowly, and I'm clicking faster than it's thinking here.
That's okay.
But just very quickly embedded some Google applications into it, a Google form. And so basically, upload a picture of your creation and add a video, and then some other additional info. Here's a form for a test flight. So, compare and contrast, do some iteration there. And then that's an embedded Google form. And then, can you break the world record? And then it's a video about the guy who broke the world record for, paper airplanes, which is what inspired my daughter to start looking at some of this stuff. And then, adding information to it. So just trying, an interactive way to either provide resources, either as a teacher for your teammates, or even putting together these interactive lessons for your students to be able to access and do at home and then demonstrate their learning.
Yeah, it feels so much like a flipped classroom, right?
Yeah. And I think it works that way as far, and then if they can get creative with it. And I would be really curious to see some of the ideas and the creations they come up with on that. So I am not sure how to get back to where we were. Oh, here, stop share.
There you go. Awesome. Thank you, LaShara. Mary, how about you from mathematics?
Yeah, I'll share what I've been up to in terms of distance learning and supporting from my role. We utilize a learning management system in addition to our digital portfolios. So I push out content in like a few different ways, but the place where I have the reflection templates is here on my portfolio, because it was sort of just like many of you, spring break, and okay, we need a plan. And I knew I needed a systematic plan that could be scalable. I needed something that I didn't want everyone going to a lot of different places. I wanted some consistency and some organization to it. So this is just since distance learning started. So I support pre-K-12, and these are distance learning templates based on the learning experiences I've written for K-5, almost K-5 only. And you can see the top row and the second row seem a lot alike because there's the English version and the Spanish version.
Love it.
For our dual language immersion. So anyway, it continues down. So I want to show you an example of, now let me stop and say, these don't mean a lot out of context because they're reflections based on the learning experiences that I've written. So this comparing fractions template right here, I've structured them a lot alike, where they just have a blanket statement. These are from the words of the kids. And this is based on the experience that I wrote. So they read Half My Day by Doris Fisher, thought about fractional parts. And then there's, I use this light gray text for them to replace it. So this is an actual image from the lesson to spark their memory. And then there's some prompts like when I close my eyes and think about more than half of something, this is what I imagine. I really wanted them to be personal instead of there's a correct answer. I realized I can use have to compare, this means this. So this bottom statement is really about the mathematical understanding. And the one above that is really about what personally do they see in their eyes. So this would make more sense if you saw the lesson, which is in my learning journals collection. And that one was comparing fractions. And so this is where I've housed all of the learning experiences, and there I write them in numbers, and it gives a brief overview of that, and then the file to download it. And so you'll recognize that image. So the images and the content from the learning experience, which was about comparing fractions, they'll complete this, and then they'll reflect in bold, because if they submit this file or any other files to our learning management system, that's fantastic. But we, like all of you, use our digital portfolios to archive for myself year after year after year, and also share at various levels, potentially with the public, what we've learned, which is not the same as sharing with our teacher in our learning management system.
That's fantastic. And I love how, you know, I wish I had this when I was in school, because mathematics was not my favorite subject, but to be able to go back and to reflect. You don't think about math as a way to reflect, and to know that when you understand the concepts, it's in that reflection mode. So it's completing the work, but it's also then taking the time to really understand the concepts. That's fantastic.
Hey, thanks. And one more thing is, like many of you, the struggle of what materials do the students have at home as we design learning experiences.
Yeah.
And even though we can rely a lot on digital tools, we can't rely 100%. But what I want is this bonus learning time that we have to be really associated with play, especially at the elementary level. So a lot of the content that I'm creating is based on photos and images and video of toys and blocks and things that could potentially be swapped out based on what they have at home.
That's fantastic. Love it. All right, Brandon, take us home on this one.
Well, that's going to be hard to follow, but however, with me being in the role of a teacher development specialist, my focus is to reflect on the instruction that teachers are doing. And I actually had a conversation with the campus regarding their end of the year evaluations for their teachers. And many of the teachers stated, well, all of my artifacts are at school, and we know that schools are closed. So I just, I told them, hey guys, well, this is a good opportunity for you all to start to kind of archive your work digitally with a digital portfolio. So I'm going to actually show you all how I've archived my work as a coach over time, just to kind of see my thinking around improving social studies instruction. And that can also be applied to the distance learning, where I can take screen grabs and video of teachers doing their online instruction and reflect on and have that feedback conversation with them. So I'm going to share my screen. All right.
And yes, I'm seeing a question. These links that you're seeing and that are made public, we'll make sure that you guys will get access to them as well.
So one thing is actually having those aha moments in your class and your teaching with teachers and with students. So I love to talk about this particular moment where students, they were talking about learning about the Kansas-Nebraska Act. and they had to apply what they learned about the Kansas Nebraska in a haiku. And we know with haikus, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. So as we were walking around the classroom, we noticed that students were counting. And one student was counting letters. And then I went to the next student. And then that student was counting all of the vowels. So I asked the student, so what are you doing? He said, I'm counting the syllables. And then the teacher was there, and I looked at the teacher, and the teacher looked at me, and we kind of had this moment where we just paused and looked at each other. And he looked at me like, what are we going to do? So at this moment, we had to actually stop at that particular point and basically reteach syllables to students and teach them through the process. Okay, this is how you know what a syllable is. So you have to clap. So for example, my name is Bruton. And once they got the hang of that, then the students were able to produce better assignments and better work. And this is actually what the students ended up producing. So I was able to take this photo with my camera, with my phone, and upload it to Bulb and actually show the work of the students on this particular assignment. And they were actually able to excel. But it didn't stop there. I didn't just stop there with my reflection. I took it back to the curriculum writer, because we have individuals on our team, one individual by the name of Jamie Filippo, who wrote all of the 7th and 8th grade lessons for our social studies department for secondary curriculum. And I stated, hey, Jamie, who's now the director of social studies, students are having a hard time with syllables and understanding how to do the haiku. So taking that back to her, she's actually improved the actual lesson by embedding that teacher move in there, or that teacher note in there, say, hey teachers, before going into the haiku, make sure you review syllables with your students. And this is how you can do that. And I even was able to kind of do my own haiku as a reflection. Shocked by the haiku, students and teachers challenge confirm my thinking. So that is how I've been able to use the digital portfolio as a social studies professional to reflect on the curriculum and the lessons that we provide to our teachers. And that's not only transferred from when we had the one-on-one teaching in the classroom, that's actually occurring now as well, as they're performing and uploading their lessons using the digital resources for our district during this time of distance learning. So trust, I would have all that uploaded as well.
Mm-hmm. So that you're able to still have that ongoing communication with your educators, so that they, and then also with those students coming in, it's still happening, even though they're not physically there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, this is fantastic, Brandon. Thank you. And actually, so you sharing that, I'm not changing the questions on you, but I am going to move into the last one, and then we'll go back to the other one. Only because I think that it makes good sense here with this transition. So starting with, I believe this time it's LaShara who gets to go first. LaShara, if you don't mind, I would love to know just how you're using DPs for professional development and establishing that online presence. Just looking at all of your portfolios, these little sneak peeks that we're getting, they're beautiful. And they make me want to dig in deeper. So if you don't mind sharing, LaShara first, that would be great.
I think it's a great way to have a repository of all of the things that you go to when you go to a professional development, being able to put it in one place and have a one-stop shop, but also not only having your resources there, but also taking the time to reflect on those resources or those learning, because sometimes when you go to a conference or a professional development, you're learning so much so quickly, you don't have time to stop and really think and process. And so digital portfolios are a great way to do that, being able to have, if you're like me, I'm a digital hoarder of things, of paper, paper and that kind of stuff. So being able to put it in one place and have access to it, but also being able to share your learning with other people that might benefit from that learning, that maybe they weren't able to go participate at that professional development or whatever, being able to share those same resources and being able to go in and click and see who has access to that information in your digital folder and your pages and all of that kind of thing, but being able to share with your audience. And then I was thinking in terms of like goal setting for learning for the year as we kind of wind down. What were the goals you set at the beginning? How did you achieve those goals? Do you have evidence of that learning for yourself as a professional? Even as, it's just good to have a reflective practice. And I think we do that kind of on a daily basis, sometimes with our lessons, but we don't always think about ourselves as a professional in those aspects, and being able to really reflect on what you're doing to move towards those goals that you might have set back in August.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Mary is next.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that about being a reflective practitioner. I intentionally schedule time after professional development that I have led to reflect on it, because during the act of design and leading and facilitating, I'll take pictures and video and write down quotes and collect artifacts. But then in the following days or that evening, I'll compile, especially because it's worth the time. I've utilized lots of time and effort and energy and thought into design and experience with my teachers, but then to really just block a little bit of time to compile that, then I have it for my own reflective practice. I can share it with others for my portfolio and all that great stuff. So blocking that time. As a leader in my own professional learning, I have a leading collection, and there's some things that I've reflected on, and I feel like that's the place where I can be a little bit bold. It's sort of a keep reading if you want to keep reading, but you don't have to. I'm not pushing it, but this is what I feel. So I've written a little bit about like what I don't do anymore when it comes to designing professional learning. I reflected after about 2 weeks of learning during this or leading during this pandemic, and just was blatant and bold and just said, this is the unsolicited advice I received, and this is why I did not take it, or this is why I did take it. Because I knew, just like lots of writing teachers out there, it's going to be healthy to write and reflect. And this is a once in a lifetime time to be in this spot. So I use it for reflection in that way too.
That's fantastic. So Brandon.
So as far as professional development, one thing, we always attend a lot of professional development. As a person in the professional development department, we facilitate a lot of development as well. But I think the only way that you can be truly reflective is if you have guiding questions set forth by, maybe you will create those yourself, or you are given those questions by someone like your supervisor, like your director, so on and so forth. And that allows you to be truly reflective on how your work was impactful. And also, whenever I do PD with teachers, I ask them, okay, how did this PD go? What did you get out of it? What could I have done better? And I even give myself those questions. What did you learn? And the thing is that we can go to as many PDs as we want now, and we can reflect on it, but are we going to actually change that reflection into action? So what's going to be the next mode or the next gear to go into that you begin to implement those particular things? So utilizing them for PD, like for myself, I have a professional development area. And anytime I'm reading something, I go with my guiding question that's provided, and I reflect on the reading. Or anytime I go to a conference, I reflect on it, and go back and kind of just see, okay, I went to this conference, I went through that particular wonderful training. Okay, what did I take from it, and what I'm going to put in? How is that going to transfer into my work? And with our team, the goal was for our portfolios to transform our coaching. And the vision was, okay, if our coaching is being transformed, then we're going to transform teachers. And if teachers are going to be transformed, then they're going to transform students. So it's from the top of that trickle down component. But you can only really truly reflect on professional development and growth when you have those specific guiding questions that's going to drive your thinking as you begin to look back on those engagements that you participated in.
Yeah, that's great. Shona. Oh, mute. You're on mute.
That must be my superpower. Staying on mute. And thinking about staff development and that kind of thing that you're really sharing there with that reflection, that has been a really powerful part of the digital portfolio for me too. But I think another thing that has been neat is a couple of things. One is a lot of times our resources, like if we have Google Classroom for how we're delivering them with management systems, they get too big. And so what this has been for me in organizing what I need to do with my teachers and delivering content to students is finding a way to organize it in a way that's better. For example, this lady right here, my friend Caitlin, was creating a novel unit for 5 people you meet in heaven, but it was all in just a Google Drive, and then it got all jumbled in the Google Classroom because there was just so much, because each one of these has so many kinds of resources and things inside of it. So all of her before reading strategies and questions and checklists for each one of her chapters is just an easier way for her to organize this. And because that's, to me, what it does is it's a curation tool to help us be able to better deliver and organize our thoughts. Because right now with the digital world, everything is just huge. There's so much stuff, and having a way to put it together in a really nice format is really powerful. Another thing that's been powerful for me is to use it for book studies whenever I'm going to work with teachers. So like this one on understanding and teaching reading comprehension, which is a fabulous book. I can tell that 18 people have been in here, and because that's about how many people were in my group. And so what I did here is I did the reflection about what I was learning in that text, and then I was able to find some resources to add into it, and then to really go through. And what my people were learning about is how they could use the comment feature to add comments in line to what I was doing, or comment features down here that I have hidden right now. But because I'm going to use it again. But to me, it's been a nice way to put a lot of information in an easily retrievable manner that I can reflect, and then my teachers can use these resources to help them do what they need to do.
And actually, you brought up a really great point about the commenting feature and the inline comments, and knowing that from a professional standpoint or from a teacher to student, you have that opportunity to provide that feedback and reflect back with them on the learning that's happening, either in the comments or as a side note to say, hey, this is a great sentence, but sentence structure needs to be fixed here and here. Just another way to use that. So thank you guys. This has been great. So I want to keep us to time. We're at 3:38 Central Time. And so I want to end with this last question, and I believe Mary will start us off. Just thinking of the poll at the beginning, and knowing that we were kind of equally shared around, the pros, the users, the novices, and then some beginners. We've got some beginners, and actually at Bulb, we've had quite a few beginners come on board just in the past month, given the situation that we're currently all in. And so I would love to get just something that you would recommend, that you would share with us here on what's something that maybe the beginner or the novice to get started into digital portfolios, to just start with a page or a collection. What are some of those tips and tricks, recommendations that you guys have? Mary.
As a professional and as an educator, I would recommend that you start in the present and not try to go back really far, because I'm not sure you'll be able to catch up, and it might be a little daunting. So start right now, and then if you can go back, but right now, what are you working on right now? And then just get started knowing you can reorganize. As a teacher with your students using Bulb or any digital portfolio, in terms of math, I would start with one solid reflection question based on what you want them to know, or have a place to go to get some good questioning or thinking prompts. I tend to go to the same place lately, and I'm completely blanking on what it is because it's bookmarked on I'm gonna tell you right now, it's worth the moment. I really like Project Zero out of the Harvard Graduate School for their thinking prompts. I was in a rut of what do you notice, what do you wonder? I was in a rut of those reflection prompts. So find some good, solid ones. My new favorite one from Project Zero is Imagine If, and it will provide them with some critical thinking skills, or almost require a little bit more critical thinking. So long story short, comparing measurement for primary kiddos. I show a quick video of kids on a seesaw, and then I paused it and said, imagine if your teacher was on the seesaw with you, what would happen? So instead of asking that surface level question, I'm asking them to put themselves in the role of the child on the seesaw and then draw some conclusions. And so right now, one image and one imagine if will prompt them into more. So I recommend some solid thinking prompts. One is sufficient to get started, but get some good questions to get their thinking going.
I love that. Just start from right now. Because it's so easy to go, I have all this other stuff, but just start right now, right where you're at. So that would be Brandon. Brandon is next.
Okay, all right. So I will agree to start with the right now, start with what you're working on now. But I will also tell them to, if they're brand new to Bulb and they're just trying to get started in practice, start with the About Me page. Start with the page that's, you know, your biography, you as a professional, and begin with that and kind of start working with that and add pictures and play around with that. But for as educators, start with, if you're reading a book, start with, you know, your reflection on that particular book, and you can use the Colleen Beer strategy of how's your thinking been changed, challenge, and confirm to drive your reflection on that particular book. Or if you have an assignment or a lesson that you kind of struggled with, then jot down your thoughts on that particular assignment or that lesson. If your students are doing a DBQ or document-based question, you can actually have your students upload their writings, and then, or you can actually get samples of your students' writings. You can pick low, medium, highs of those particular writings, and then you can actually begin to share that work with your coworkers to kind of calibrate that work, give those students feedback. There are many ways to start, you know, simply. You don't want to go in and think you have to create all these collections and all of these pages, because it can be overwhelming. Sure. You just keep it simple and with your guiding questions, and really put it around that reflection with the student work. Have those student artifacts up there, post those artifacts, share your thoughts on those artifacts, and go move from there.
That's fantastic. And Shona?
Thank you. I think the most important thing for me whenever I'm designing and using these is that I really think about what my purpose is. For example, this one right here, I wanted to make sure that I had ways for my students to show evidence of their learning and progression over time for fluency. And so what I did is made these to be templates that students could go in and they can have the instructions of what they're supposed to do. They have the text that they are to read aloud. And then they have the reflection things that show kind of what is happening to them with their reading and their understanding about that. And then a strategy to go back and really look and think about evaluating theirs. So I wanted them to be able to have a model to create things. So I had to think about the best delivery system for them to do that. And a digital portfolio has the capacity for students to record their voices in there so that I can keep track of those ideas.
That's fantastic.
So I think, again, just keeping in mind of what your purpose is.
Yep.
To a lot of times I think we have technology that we use, but what's it for? What's it doing? How is it contributing to the learning?
And LaShara.
Well, I was thinking about really kind of what Brandon was talking about. The All About Me page is a great place to start, because it kind of walks you through learning how to use the different tools available on, you know, how to create a collection, how do you put a page into a collection, just playing around with it. So I would suggest just playing, using some, you know, doing something, documenting something that you love to do or that you enjoy doing. Even something as simple as starting a class portfolio page. You know, sometimes you're tracking and documenting things you're doing in your classroom throughout the year, special events, different learning aspects, those kinds of things. And that's a great place to start. And you can even have your students help you kind of curate some of the information that would go into those portfolios to be able to share out with families. and have those snapshots into the classroom. But really starting with one or two things, you know, finding a project that is something that your whole class could do together. So you're modeling the tool with the students, you're learning and modeling with them. And to be honest with you, a lot of times students know more how to, they're more less afraid to click on something and try it out than we are as adults. And so, you know, don't be afraid to get in there. And if you delete something, okay, just add it back in there, or, you know, just get in there and play around and have fun and just try one or two things. Don't try to do all the things at once. Yeah. And, you know, keep it simple. Keep it simple. I love it. And that's definitely a bold motto, is simple. so with that, you guys, thank you so much. What I want to do is, I've already been seeing some questions coming in. I'm just going to share my screen here and move us to the next. We're going to do Q&A with our panelists, everyone. And I have noticed just within in the chat side of things, one in particular. So before we even get going on the Q&A, one thing that I saw in the chat was if there were any examples that any of you might be able to show of a student work in particular. Are you able to access one of your students' portfolios just to kind of give a picture of what their world looks like in a digital portfolio? And if you can't, we understand. I'm just throwing that out there in case that's something that we can show them.
Michelle, I was responding. Can you answer or ask the question again?
Yeah, so the question was, and this actually came from, I think it was Lynn, where she was just asking to see what a student digital portfolio might look like. Knowing that, you know, you've got students using digital portfolios this past year, are we able to take a little peek into what theirs looks like? And, you know, potentially even see the different subject areas, or just even a page or some of the work that they've been doing. And I know that we've had, I know Bria's in here sharing from our own examples within Bulb, but if there's something out there that you guys are able to show, that would be fantastic.
For us, unfortunately, right now, we don't have that student samples, because for our district, it was for the instructional coaches first, and our goal is to move it down to students. So hopefully next year, we'll have student samples and student examples, because our district was awarded the District Improvement Grant for the Texas Social Studies Supervisors Association. And our goal is to have pilot campuses and pilot classrooms and have students use digital portfolios. So my goal is to have at least 6 classrooms with 6 classrooms worth of student samples to be able to show that. So we're hoping that that takes off. The COVID-19 shutdown has kind of halted that for a moment, but our goal is to get that moving in the next school year, next semester, and we hope we can share that. But I will say this, from my understanding, most of the student portfolios and student pages sort of look like our pages. It's still the same idea of them putting in assignments and reflecting on it. So that model is sort of similar. So they'll start with showcase their thinking, they'll start with their the question that they've been asked, and they'll have images of their assignments or the work that they've been doing, and they'll continue to reflect. And the good thing is that the teacher or the leader of that particular group can actually comment on that work, and the student can make those corrections. And so there's really no difference in the way that the pages look versus the teachers and professionals versus students.
Because they're templatizing, right? So teachers are creating these templates, they're sharing them out, they're uploading them through Google Classroom or whatever system they're using. Students can take it and make it their own.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I hope to have those samples this time next year.
Yeah, Michelle, I don't know if we want to take the panel. I'm more than willing to share a quick student portfolio if you want me, or we can just move into questions, whatever works.
Bria, I have a simple example.
Here. I see Mary working.
Yeah, go Mary.
Okay, sorry, I was scrolling so we couldn't see the student name.
Oh, nice, thank you. Thank you for the sneak peek, Mary, we really appreciate it.
Okay, so this is really simple, but you can see across the top, this week I learned about. So this was from one of the templates that I shared, which is about solving problems with geometry, measurement, and angles, and it has a beautiful picture across the top that the student took, but it has their name, so I don't want to show that. And so it straight up says, I watched a video about complementary and supplementary angles in real life. It led me to think about angles, complementary and supplementary. So part of this was the sentence starter that I wrote, and then the child completed the statement. I love that you can't tell where my words end and the child's words begin. I read Circumference in the Great Night of Angleland. Cindy Nguyen-Schwander is a really great author around that, and solved a problem about sailboat models and one about angles on a clock. And then you can see here, this is the problem the child solved. And if you notice, this is in Spanish. So this child is in part of our dual language immersion program. And you can see the pink text here is what the child added. And you can see up here, this is from Notabilities. The child on her iPad used Notability, added that, and then included it right here in their journal. In their portfolio. I also used critical thinking in this learning journal. And so this was the learning journal that I provided. And this is a screenshot, which is a fantastic way to upload any files. We encourage that if there's kind of a lot going on. This is the child's handwriting on their iPad. Then here they sorted. It was an activity where they sorted what's a polygon and what's not a polygon. I'm not gonna lie, as the math director, I'm really proud of the work that I see in terms of accuracy. But all of these little cards for the card sort, these green ones, were up here at the top in my lesson, and the child physically dragged and sorted them into the different sections. And then here took a screenshot of where the child lives, and then mapped out a polygon in the streets. What I noticed and what I wonder, it's a type of triangle, and one day my polygon will be a famous shape, I think is what it says. So anyway, this is all from that 1 week's worth of lessons. With notices and wonderings, and then I used to think, but now I know. So some prompts there. Anyway, that's an example of student work, which out of context isn't a whole lot, but if I was the teacher and I had assigned this, I can see exactly what the student learned and what the child chose to add in as well.
Yeah, this is a great example. Thank you so much, Mary. And actually, I see Lynn writing in all caps, awesome. So awesome example going on right now. And that's what we were looking for. So curious, any other questions coming in, you guys? You're more than welcome. We've got a little bit of time still, and since we've got our panelists, I want to make sure we get your questions answered. Did I miss any in the chat too? I want to make sure. And there's also the Q&A in case anybody's putting them in there. I haven't seen any come in.
Michelle, I think there was another question in the chat that was just kind of asking about like the portability of bulb, and how does the teacher and student work together in terms of like, how are the student portfolios linked to the teacher?
How they're linked to the teacher? Okay.
Yeah, so they're just trying to understand like the workflow, from my understanding of the question, the workflow between students and teachers, and their own teacher portfolio and the student's portfolio. How are they connected or not?
So I'm thinking this is the one from Lynn that came in. Conceptually, is bulb creating individual student portfolios that can be ported with them as they move to the next grade level? And where does the teacher fit in? That's a great question, Lynn. And Bria, don't hesitate to jump in. I'm sure you guys also probably have some thoughts on this as well. So I don't want to answer that if you guys have the desire to share it from a teacher experience of moving that student through. But just really quick, yes. So the way that bulb works, it does go with the student, and bulb says it for life. So once they have it, the goal is to have them to continue to use that digital portfolio through their life, regardless of what school they're at or where they're at within their life. So if they're in career, they should be using a digital portfolio just as much as a first grader might be using it to show their reading level and where they've grown over the past year. So with teachers, what's really nice about Bulb 2 is it's going to allow that teacher view into the students' work from previous years. And so for instance, you've got a sixth grader now that's moving into seventh grade, and they're going from one English language class to now that seventh grade English language. And that new teacher is going to be able to review that past work and get a more thorough view of the student coming in, where they're at, where their strengths are, where they can assess and support along the way in the coming year. And any of my educators here that would like to jump in and just kind of share how that's worked for them. If you've been doing that, that would be fantastic.
I think it's a great opportunity because it moves with the student and the teacher can see it the next year, especially if you have students who are in that process of response to intervention or SPED, or your ESL students who need to show progress over a length of time for, you know, in Texas TELPAS or whatever that might be. Tracking that, it provides a place for that to be with the student. Even if the student moves from the school district to another state, they can take the portfolio with them and they have a repository of work to share with their new teacher and the new school to help, you know, as a parent, that would be helpful to have that to go with them, because, you know, things get lost along the way, or moving from school to school, from, you know, even an elementary campus to a middle school or middle school to high school, things get lost. I also like the fact that students that graduate or seniors can, you know, take their portfolio with them, their work that they've done in high school for college entrance exams or whatever they might need for that, for admissions. You know, they can send out particular folders for different colleges they put together. So there's a lot of usage, not just for, you know, collecting stuff for the classroom or for assessment, but it really does show this person over time. And it's not just academics, but it can have, you can have the hobbies in there, the things that they enjoy, they like. So it's really, it can encompass a lot of different areas to show really the whole person and how that person has grown and developed over, you know, months or years, or, you know, even into the professional career. I'm thinking in terms of my students that I work with, pre-service teachers, going out for job interviews right now. If they had a digital portfolio that looked like how Bulb puts things together, that is really high level professionalism, and they have all their stuff archived right there. They're not pulling out a binder on someone's desk. And they can, you know, they can send that out as a link to their person that they're going to be interviewing with. So it's a great opportunity to just highlight and showcase who you are, not only academically, but as a person in general, and then your passions, your goals, and things like that. So
yeah, that's excellent. It speaks so powerfully to the whole student. Yes, Brandon.
And you can also sort of streamline the information that you're putting inside your Bulb from year to year. So if a student, because we know that sometimes things can get a little out of control and they can look a little messy. So for example, with me, I'm able to, I'll share it again. Let's see if I can find it. If I have it back up. But, oh, there we go. So for me, for example, I categorize each year. So when I'm done with the year, I put all my work from that year into a particular category, and then I'm able to organize it that way. So for example, if I go back here, and we can get our students to do the exact same thing. So if I look at my coaching and development, and if you notice, I have the different years here. So 2017, 2018, 2018, 2019. And the other campuses that are out here now, currently, I can put that into the 2019, 2020 folder, and that'll archive that and clean it up for us as well. And one thing I do like is the fact that if I go into another year, another individual can create a class and they'll be a part of that class for that year. And then the next year, someone else can create another class and they'll be a part of the class for that particular year. But you can still refer back to the previous year's information, and because it's archived inside of the portfolio. So it looks overwhelming, it looks daunting, but it's not. It's not one more thing. It actually makes things a lot more easier. But you just have to just be disciplined to make sure that you're updating it as much as you can.
That's fantastic.
I want to add real quick, when you're designing, there was a comment made about it being kind of overwhelming.
Yes.
From the curriculum writer or educator perspective, it's a mind shift to designing content worth archiving. And then when you think about how much do I archive, think about what is we call them our high priority standards. Some people call them their essential standards, but what are the big ticket? What are the big rocks? What are the anchors that really show that are really most important, that the other things just support? And think about designing content worth archiving, what products the students will create, how it can be personal. I don't want my portfolio to look like anybody else's. I want it to be mine. I don't want you to be able to take my name off and put somebody else's name on it. It makes sense. So I would say from a perspective, a personalized perspective, make your mark in terms of design. And then from a teacher's perspective, design lessons worth archiving.
Mm-hmm. That is great, you guys. Thank you all so much. And I know that we are now a minute over time, and I do see one more question. So just really quick, because I think it's really valuable. And it's from Lynn, who is asking about, what is that youngest grade level? And I know Bria is sharing specifically about some schools that even are, I know Capel does kindergarten. I know Shona shared that she's seen it within elementary schools as young as first grade in New Zealand, for example. So I think of it more of establishing that digital citizenship when we're thinking of our littles, right? Just getting them started and getting them to use the tool, and thinking back to what you guys all shared of, just start from where you're at. So something simple, take it step by step. Is there anything that you guys would share thinking of those littles, those kindergartners? Just last week we had Week of Young Child, where we talked about how you can use a digital portfolio with those preschoolers to get them doing music and mathematics and science and English language and all of that. So thoughts before we close?
I know we have been sharing the website of things, but there is a Bulb app that is user friendly, especially with the little ones, because honestly, they've probably had a device in their hand since they were able to sit up, and they can click and they're not afraid to add things. They can take pictures, they can make videos, they can add those in. Learning how, I know the biggest thing I've had to, that saved me a lot with distance learning with my own child is teaching her how to use voice to text. So little kids can do that. And if I was, we're still working with my kindergarten kids in the classroom, you better believe we would be doing this, and they'd be able to do it. They'll surprise you. They're able to do a lot more than people really think they can.
That's a great point.
I think it's important that you as the educator, you model and you walk them through it, just like we'll walk our older students through it step by step. If you walk them through it step by step and continue to practice, then they'll build their capacity. And like Lashara said, they will surprise you. Students, little kids are bright. They're very smart. They can program your TV, they can program your iPad. They can do all that. They're smart, but we have to focus that intelligence and have them doing the correct thing.
I think even on just a final thought was, sometimes we focus so much on our devices are entertainment, tools for entertainment, instead of, we have to change the mindset to shift it into a tool for learning, and teaching students how to be able to do that. And I even have to do that with my college level students, teaching them how to use that tool for good and for learning and instruction and practice, and not just as a device for entertainment, and teaching them how to even use things like a digital portfolio or even social media applications, as far as, integrating that into their instruction and their curriculum and things like that. And so I think it's the same thing, starting them off young and showing them how to, and modeling that. That's so important for us to model that for our kiddos, how we use our devices and interact with them, and they'll be able and more willing to do that for themselves as learners too.
That's an excellent point. And actually, unless there's anything left to say, with that, I just want to close us out. Using this for good, right? Because right now, I think just in general right now, we are so focused on, what does this all mean? Putting our kids now, I'm just thinking of my own three, and they are living in their devices right now. And it's a lot for them to take, it's a lot to process. And so being able to give them those skills to manage how to use it the right way effectively so that it's supporting their learning and it's not just about, like you said, the entertainment value, LaShara. That's so true and so necessary for right now. So with that, you guys, I just want to close us out. We will continue to be doing these webinars. Matter of fact, we are talking already about what the next one's going to look like in May. So we'll make sure to keep everybody updated. I want to do a shout out to the 4 panelists. You guys are fantastic. I like all the claps. I wish you could hear the claps. I'm sure happening all around. Thank you. Fantastic. And so appreciative that you guys were able to take some time today to share with us. And we will be getting those links. We will be getting those things shared out so that you guys can see the templates that you saw today and get access to them. And this has been recorded, so we'll be sharing it out and we'll be turning it into a blog sometime next week for sure, so that you guys can kind of get the takeaways, the learnings that came out of this, because there was a lot along with those links. And for that, we're going to sign off and say thank you guys all. May you continue to stay safe, healthy, and keep teaching. Keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you.